Welcome to Creative Vitality Jam Sessions. Here we have intimate conversations with extraordinary dance and theater artists about reimagining creativity and supporting and building community. Creative Vitality Jam Sessions and I walk in solidarity and as allies for equality, respect, and justice. Black Lives Matter. And we must keep walking the walk in order for change to come. I'm Helen Pickett, and today's guest is Meade. She is the artistic director of Meade Dance Collective. Mari and I have known each other since 2017. She was a part of the inaugural session of UNCSA's Choreographic Institute. Mari is a formidable outside-the-box artist. Hello, Mari. Thank you for waiting for my introduction.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, where are you in the world? That's our first question for everyone.
I'm based in New York City, but right now I'm in Louisiana at my parents' house, and we're hoping to get to France soon. But I've been in Louisiana for 2 months, a little over 2 months now.
Oh wow! Well, it's super pretty behind you. Really beautiful.
Yeah, it's nice that my parents have I get to be outside, I get to go swimming, we get to go
nice.
bike riding, so it's much better than my little New York City 1-bedroom apartment.
Right. Well, you look beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
I want to stay with the Choreographic Institute for the first question. How did that program shift your views as a choreographer, as an artistic director, in how you construct or build pieces?
Yeah. So I was selected the inaugural year, which was 2017. And I mean, one big takeaway is you. I mean, our relationship has been huge. And the way that you encouraged and kind of helped craft my coaching, I think was the biggest impact. I think, figuring out just like what that means even. And I think with you coming from knowing ballet and from a contemporary, forget that you get to be coached in like each technically almost too. And the technique coaching also helped them like love the choreography. And I think that that's one thing I've taken away a lot. And then just so now I have a relationship with that program and with you. And the next year I came back as a peer mentor, and then the next year as the associate director, which I am now. And being able to like create community quickly and practicing that, I think has also become a skill set that I hope to use in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a formidable program. I do hope it continues because, as we both know, Susan Jaffe is now the new director of Pittsburgh Ballet, which is also quite exciting. But I don't see why it shouldn't continue. Just next year, not this year, of course. Right. So we'll see.
Yeah, there's a lot up in the air for everyone right now.
Yeah. Okay, so you actually answered that question, except that I think you have a little more history with UNCSA.
Yeah, so when I was living in Louisiana when Hurricane Katrina hit, and I was a senior in school, and I was going to NOCA, New Orleans Center for the Creative Arts, in the Maroney, which you know, and so when Katrina came, the school closed, and I was a senior, and it was the beginning of the year, August, and I did not want to be without dancing for a year, especially my senior year before college auditions. And so I went on a frantic search on the internet. We had evacuated to Dallas at the time, actually, because I was
some of those people. Wow.
Yeah, it was a crazy event. My house was okay, but because we live outside of the city, but it had some trees down, and then the schools closed, and then my dad had to stay and work, and we evacuated, which was also just a little traumatic. But Brenda Daniels from UNCSA, I wrote her and was like, can I come to school there? Like, I need to be dancing. And she was like, sure. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh my goodness, I can't afford boarding school.
Yeah.
And she was like, let me see what I can do. And Alex Ewing sponsored a couple of us to come, and him and there was one of Lindgren, Mr. Lindgren, and so 5 of us from NOCA went to UNCSA. So it was amazing, yeah. And then from there, you know, and I don't think I would have ever gotten a scholarship, but because they saw how I work, they offered me a full scholarship for college. So I was able to, and then I could graduate in 3 years. So then I ended up graduating high school and college from UNCSA. And then I got the Keenan Fellowship, which is offered only to UNCSA students at Lincoln Center Education. And that was in New York. So I moved to New York, and that's how I started my college, you know, my company. And so NCSA was like a huge life-changing, and I've spent, you know, I was there when I was 17, and then I was there last year when I was 31. So it's been a big part of my life in a big way.
It's an extraordinary place. I mean, how much they gave, you know, those 5 people from NOCA, and look where it took you. I mean, just an extraordinary trajectory of how the puzzle pieces of life, full of intention, because as you said, it was your work ethic too that let them, you know, your intention filled work that allowed you to get or to earn that scholarship, which then went to the next thing. Really, it's beautiful. I love hearing stories like that.
Yeah, and I didn't even know about I didn't know about them at all. I was applying for a purchase in Juilliard, and I had never heard of NCSA, now UNCSA. So, I mean, even just that little discovery, I think, is a little gem that came out of a traumatic event.
That's right. That's right. Interesting you say that. I just have to make a small remark on that. Again, we're in this, you know, we are in the middle of the maelstrom of this traumatic event, right? And what you just said is something I keep trying to mention, that great art, possibility, new avenues come from places of trauma and come from, you know, they can. Yeah, I'm not downgrading any of it, of course, but you know, you mentioned that from this place of great trauma from, you know, of the hurricane. You know, 5 people were given a chance, and probably more, but in this specific case. So it's good to remember that you can also be a self-starter. You know, it might not bring in money, but it might lay the foundations for something else, you know, to come.
Sometimes, like, not where you're looking a little bit, you know?
Right.
It didn't help me get into Juilliard, but it helped me go this other way that in turn ended up, you know, to be a much more fulfilling relationship for me. But if I had thought like, oh, what could I, you know, what's my hope for this? It's to, you know, it's like this.
Yeah, and you did get to New York.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you come to create the MMDC, Murray Meade Dance Collective, and why was it important to you to have your own company?
So I was 21 and I was in New York City, and I was doing everything possible, and I had this fellowship at Lincoln Center for 6 months, which is just incredible because for 6 months I didn't have to have a job. I had to fill out 40 hours, and it could be meeting with a mentor, it could be going to the library, it could be taking class, it could be interning somewhere. So it allowed me to intern, you know, have an unpaid internship with Monica Bill Barnes, actually. So in that time, you also, at the end of it, you got a show. And so I made this show on ant communities. So just like really quick, so ant communities, the one that I studied, the queen ant is the only one allowed to mate. All the drones mate with her in one day, and then they all die. All the workers are female, but they're not allowed to mate. They can, but they're not allowed to. Sometimes it's a thing called a selfish worker, and the worker mates with the drone, and then the community kills the worker and or the worker's eggs. So I took that, and then we made a piece on it. And how does it, what's the parallel to, do women have to, is it selfish to reproduce, or where do you feel like your loyalties are in society versus what you want for yourself? And I made like a 45-minute piece, and I was paired with a composer, and I just was like, I love this. This is so fun. And and my dancers did too. And so after the show, and I think I paid them $40 for the whole process. It was like everyone had just moved there, and we just wanted to dance. And afterwards I was like, okay, well, now it's time to audition for the big companies, but I don't really want to do that. What I want to do is to choreograph. And my dancers were like, well, we want to keep dancing. So I took 4 of them, and we just kept rehearsing twice a week for 11 years. And 2 of them, one is now the associate director and a dancer, Brianna Gribble, and then Alison Felder, she's also the rehearsal director. And most of my company has been with me 6 to 10, 11 years. And we rehearse twice a week, year round. And the first year we had 32 shows, like performing on like sidewalks and chapels and beach, like anything we could do, we were like, we're gonna do it. And then as the years have gone by, we have less shows but bigger shows. So we're not doing 5-minute blips in an attic anymore. We're doing shows mostly twice a year, and these kind of abstract story ballets, or moderns, I like to say.
So moderns, is that what you said?
Yeah, because I like that. I love the narrative, and that's a really important, like, character development and textures and stories. I love creating worlds and creating very specific worlds, and thinking about, like, is it a human world? Is there moss? How do they walk in this world? Or and so I say moderns because it's like a ballet, but it's with contemporary vocabulary, but it's often evening length, or a full story, whether how long that is, but yeah.
I too like creating worlds, and it took me making my first full-length Camino Real to see that I had been creating worlds all those 25-minute, half-an-hour ballets that I'd made before. I mean, there were a few before that really followed a narrative, plays, but I saw that is what I really love to do. And I also love creating the whole world, the textures, what furniture is used, and think like, if the facets of the world are created, you don't take any of those facets for granted. Otherwise, it doesn't need to be in your world, right? Yeah. That, I think, also came from human beings first in the studio. And that's why I too love and really study coaching all the time, because it really is about the individual in front of you and not your steps. It's what happens. It's this marriage of the two that will get the individual seen more through your vocabulary.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that my dancers have influenced my work so much just by the ways they move and think, and sometimes I like really dig into, like, oh, there's that one thing. I remember one of my first pieces was this Vivaldi piece, and one of the girls, she kept doing this like weird little thing, and I was like, let's do that, and we made it into a whole section. And then sometimes it's like, after we work with someone for a while, you're like, oh, you're really good at this thing, let's try this other venue, and dig in and feel like, so what made a fulfilled art. Thinking about the dancers that way has led to a lot of choreography, instead of thinking about the steps first and then like which dancer can do them.
It's exactly, yes. Okay, so you have actually, you mentioned it briefly, but I want to go into this. You have a new space in France called Le Moulin de la Belle. Can you go into into the details of this new venture and the center, this new way of life for you. How has this new reimagining deepened, even before, deepened your creative life?
Mm-hmm.
I know that a lot more will come when you get there, but
Yeah, it's I think it's going to be a shock and a life change for sure. But for people that don't speak French, Le Moulin is a mill. And so this is a 1800s water mill, and de la Belle, Belle means beauty, but it's actually the name of the river that we're sitting on.
oh,
So that's our working title. We've gone back and forth of what to call it, but we want to have basically an artist residency that's not just for artists. So anyone that's wanting to a retreat, a residency to disconnect and recharge, offer personalized pathways with unprecedented support. We want it to be sustainable, brave, kind, creative. Those are kind of the words that we're working with. So we're going to have a dance studio, we're going to have a visual art studio, and then my husband is a carpenter and gardener and cook, and so we're going to have a permaculture garden. So hopefully everything that you eat will be from the land, and it'll take a while to get there, but meanwhile we'll have people come out and volunteer, and it really open for possibilities. If you're like, I'm tired of New York and I want to write my new code for 2 weeks in the back little house by the waterfall, come, so really, how can we help you to disconnect and recharge yourself, your connection to nature, to community, maybe to the French lifestyle, a simplified lifestyle. And really, yeah, so I mean, it's really exciting. It's going to take a lot of work and physical, and this time off, or whatever this weird block of time has been for me. I've been figuring out a pitch, I've been figuring out the budget, I've been doing that kind of research, and connecting with a lot of artists that are not dancers, figuring out how to support them, and can you do clay in the same room that you can do painting, or how much light do you need if you're a painter, or what are the important things to have if you're a woodworker, or what can we be offering, and we want to have a lot of different types of artists there. So maybe someone will come and pay to be there, but we also want to have stipends so that it's really accessible and affordable to people, and equitable for everybody. So, and maybe someone comes that is a patron of the arts and they're there to connect with artists, and that leads to a new collaboration or a new sponsorship. Or so I'm hoping that, because we're kind of casting our net wide, that people that are just interested in creativity and in the space to disconnect and recharge will be the common denominator, not being a dancer or being a certain age or being a certain profile or anything like that.
In listening to you, it sounds really it sounds like a utopian idea, and I say that not in an unattainable way. I love that the things you mentioned, that it doesn't have to be artists or the age limits are not there, and it's an equitable place to basically discover.
Mm-hmm.
It's a discovery place.
Yeah.
And so I have a question. Will it have eventually, will it have places will there be rooms where people can stay on the property, or is there a town that's close by, or how does that work?
So there are rooms. Currently there's 3 bedrooms in the main house. So we'll use 2 of those bedrooms to do housing, kind of a smaller version, until we redo the mill, and the mill will eventually be the artist housing section.
And how many could that fit?
We're thinking like that generally it'll be 3 to 8 artists at a time, so it'll be pretty small. But if you were a company, like we could probably house up to 12 to 15 if you wanted to share bedrooms and do that kind of thing. And then we're also a train from Paris to Angoulême, and then a bus to our town. And we're about like 3 blocks we're in the town center. We're on the edge. Literally, the river is the edge of the town, and so we're on the edge. So you can walk to the grocery store, you can walk to the bar, the coffee shop, the butcher. You know, so we wanted something that you come and then you do you. And so you know, if you need to go and get your almond milk at the grocery store, we don't have to go drive you. We're not so far away that, or if you want to.
That aspect is excellent.
Yeah, that was a really.
It's excellent that you're so close to town. That's going to be very attractive.
It's 1,000 people town, but
still, it doesn't matter. It's like when you're on a retreat and you really are, you know, dependent on someone else's vehicle. For me, it would be very important. For me, that is tantalizing. So how far of a train ride from Paris to what town did you say?
Angoulême. So
okay. How far is that train ride?
About 2 hours.
Oh, that's nothing.
Yeah.
And then the bus to your town?
30 minutes.
It's easy.
Right? Yeah. It drops you off at a castle 2 blocks from our house.
And is it southwest, southeast, due south? What is it?
Southwest.
Southwest.
Yeah, the area is Dordogne.
Oh yeah.
And so it's a beautiful area, and there's lots of, you know, history. There's castles. There's caves that are thousands of years old. There's and a lot of that is accessible by bus too. So I really want to be that, like, come and you don't have a car, that's okay. And because that's what I was always looking for in New York. I was like, where can I go get away? And I went to this place called Lake Studios Berlin after I got divorced, and I just went by myself, and I spent a week just walking backwards. I just was like, I'm just gonna rediscover, like, I've been walking forward for 30 years. Let's walk backwards some. And I didn't make any work. I didn't teach any class. And I took some classes, I went swimming in the lake, and I just my goal was like, figure out how to be with silence a little bit more. And I'm so grateful that I was able, as an artist, I was able to do that. And it changed my life. And I want to be able to offer that to people. Even, like, you don't need to be an artist to walk backwards in the space, or to need time to heal by yourself, or to or to be in silence or be in nature. And I stayed in, like, you know, a 3-walled little hut with one side open, and hedgehogs came in at night, you know, and it was $20 a night or something. You know, it wasn't like luxurious, but it was life-changing. So that's more important.
Yeah. Beautiful. So you just wrote me about this, but I'd like to hear about it because it sounds like a very interesting course. Can you speak about the course you took this year called Creative Catalyst, Artist as Leader, Innovator, and Entrepreneur? How did that shift your views on leadership and creating?
Mm-hmm. So I've had a relationship with the Keenan Institute. So they were the ones that sent me to Lincoln Center, and I'm now on their board also. And so this was the first year of the program, so I took it as kind of like a pilot program. And there's 3 trimesters, and the first trimester on leadership, I think the biggest takeaway was that they kind of talked about leadership as leader of self, leader of community, and leader of ideas. And I think sometimes as dancers, we forget the leader of self, that you are having to, and that's a huge skill set, a huge asset that you could be capitalizing on, that we're never taught, that we somehow manage to, to work 2 jobs and schedule in rehearsal and figure out how to heal from this injury and apply for a grant and go on tour for 2 weeks and then figure out how to see your sister on the way home. I mean, like, there's so many different things that dancers are able to juggle, and like this mindset, and you're really a leader. You're leading yourself in a successful lifestyle when you do that. And I think that sometimes it's like brushed aside, like, oh, you're busy, or you're multitasking. And so that was one just takeaway, being like, oh yeah, I do that, and all my dancers do that, and all my, a lot of my community does that. And when I don't do that, it's like, not because I'm not a good person or something, or I'm not successful. It's okay. That's a skill. You can't always be whatever the skill is, you can't always be perfect at your spreadsheet, and sometimes you can't always be perfect at this leader of self. And so I think that recognizing it as an asset that exists outside of me was really eye-opening. And then this last kind of trimester on entrepreneurship has been, so we meet weekly on Zoom with artists from all over the US and all different types, you know, someone who wanted to open a gallery, someone who makes these beautiful moss paintings, some dancer, I mean, every type of artist, and age and place, you know, New York City or Oklahoma, or I mean, like a really big variety. And getting feedback from them and doing the work, like really doing the budget and doing the marketing and doing the research on 3 people that are doing a similar project to you, and then like what differentiates your project, and having to present that every week. It's like, I mean, it really helped me kind of stay motivated during this time where it'd be easy to kind of sink back.
So wait,
yeah.
I have a couple questions before you go on. 3 trimesters, you said. How much is a trimester?
So it was a full school year, kind of. So it started in like September, and we just finished a few weeks ago.
Great. So a full school year. And is there an age? Just so the audience. So anybody can apply. Is it an application? Do you apply for this? This was the pilot year. So you applied to the Keenan Institute?
To Creative Catalyst. Yeah. Maybe I'll send a link or somewhere.
Send a link, because just as part of my research, I put in Creative Catalyst to the search engine, and a whole lot of stuff came up that I knew wasn't this program.
Right. Yeah.
So just because other people, it sounds like a great program.
Yeah, and you can start.
Yeah.
I think every trimester they have a new, you know, group starting. So there's a group right now that's on what artist as innovator, or you know, but yeah, I'll definitely send that, because it I mean, it's a skill set that and you're not always taught. We're taught these like technique, composition, and all these things, and then you go to apply for a grant, or they're like, well, how much money do you need? And you're like, I have no idea.
So maybe, do you have the address like on hand? Maybe you can say it at the end of the program. You don't have to look now. Just if not, then you know, when your video is posted, you could actually send it. You could me, and then I'll put it in the description box below your video. So maybe that's the way to do it.
I have it,
or even in the blurb. Okay.
I can, let's see. I can send it to you now in chat. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, because then Gracie, the amazing Gracie, can get it, and we can add it to the description box. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Did you have more to say about that, or shall we move on?
No, yeah, we can. I mean, I think I recommend it, and I'm also like happy to talk. If someone has specific questions, they can always reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about it and see if it's a good fit for people. I mean, it does cost. I don't know what the costs are, but there are scholarships available too. So it's worth looking at, I think.
Great. So in addition to your collective, you're also a freelance choreographer. Are you working? So you just actually said what you were working on currently. You're working on your new venture in France. But I know as a freelance choreographer, for example, you did the New York Choreographic Institute. Does that still entice you, or do you like the idea of working with a group that you know, they know you? Is there what are the benefits of both sides, I guess?
Another thing that kind of started when I met you, that I was like, oh, I can be a freelance choreographer also. And do you hear just, if there's like a hawk right here?
It's amazing. Yeah. We have the nature background noises.
But yeah, so I started doing freelance work when we met, because you inspired me that I could actually work beyond my company. And I made a duet with Kyle Davis and Becca Downing with ballet vocabulary. And then I applied for a lot of other opportunities, including the New York Choreographic Institute, which I did, and made 2 duets and a quartet on New York City ballet dancers. And each one of those experiences, I was like, I want more, I want more, I want more. And in France, I'm hoping that because a lot of those residencies are self-contained, they're a week, so 3 weeks, and travel and still be able to do that. Whereas maybe having a season somewhere would pose more challenges. And actually this year I was selected for the National Choreographers
Yes.
Initiative, but it's not happening this year. So it's happening in 2021. I'm grateful that they have offered to the same 4 choreographers next year. And so also it gives me a year to stew and brew and think. And I love the textures in Louisiana. I've been thinking a lot about those textures. And there's a story, Evangeline, which is a Longfellow story.
Yes,
And there's
I know it.
okay, yeah. And so that's like one thought. Maybe there's something there. And I actually started exploring a little bit with my company in March, right before all of this happened. And then also there's a story of the Long Black Veil, which Johnny Cash sang and Dave Matthews sang it later. And it's a song, but it's, I think it's a story that, if altered correctly, could also have a really strong message about equity and Black Lives Matter. And so I'm also thinking about that. And maybe those are connected. Maybe it ends up being this story in the Louisiana Evangeline swamp, or maybe they're separate, or maybe, I mean, what often happens is I'll draw and write and talk, and then for like a year or half a year, and then get in the studio and just make some stuff and see like where we fall in love, what music or what movements, and then I like recreate the narrative from there. So I don't really work very linear.
You know, it's funny, I remember your drawings.
So.
I remember when you showed me your notebook in 2017, and I was so taken. I was like, yeah, I can see what you're talking about. You know, that is not a talent I own, but I just dig figures. But your drawings were extraordinary, and the score. I remember you made some kind of curly looking score with all over the page, and I actually could, you know, of course it was my perception, but I could understand something in it. I understood, you know, and especially with your with how you explained it. That's a very clear memory.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah. Actually, line contours are like when, you know, if you don't look at somebody and you just draw their face. So I do that with music, where you don't look at the drawing and you draw the score essentially, and then sometimes I'll do it 100 times, sometimes I'll do it once, sometimes I'll be like, this is it, and I'll go back and color it in or elaborate on it, or I remember we were stuck on like one part and we couldn't figure out how to count it, so we kind of like drew it out because there were certain little notes that we wanted to hit, but I ended up being like, okay, let's count to 13 and then 5 or something.
I do the same thing. And dancers will be like, okay, this is a 6, and this next one's a 7, and then there's a 12. And they look at me like, well, I was like, no, it has to be counted that way. And I'm not a big counter, but it has to be counted that way because that is also how I see the block, the sentences going in the structure.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely, my dancers would say, have like a mathematical inclination. There's like a lot of math and patterns, and it's very difficult. I mean, it's like for the dancers, their brain wise, it's like, oh, here's another one of those things that you have to do in 14 counts 6 times, but the 4th time is 14 and a half.
Exactly. Totally get it. Yes, absolutely. Okay, great. Let's see. You actually just gave a great tip of a great inspirational tip on drawing a score for yourself. So that was already part of one of the, well, actually that was one of the questions. So great, we did that. How do you find daily inspiration? And can you share a favorite or impactful memory or memories from your creative life? So it's two questions, but they kind of roll together.
Yeah. I think it's really hard to find inspiration right now, and I think that it's okay that it's really hard. I think that, you know, there's a lot, just the world is really heavy. So even if, for me, moving has been really important. And I don't think that right, I just
You
had
did?
surgery, and so I have to have two,
On what?
yeah, it's a small surgery.
Okay.
But um, so I can't exercise for 2 weeks, and I
Oh,
think that made me be like, oh wow, just walking or riding my bike or going swimming or working out or taking a class or um, just the movement every day is really important to me. And I've always been the kind of person that if I don't create, I get sad. People always say like, why do you make work? And for me, it's like, it's just, I get sad after, you know, a few weeks I'm okay, and then after a certain amount of time. So I think figuring out, I can't right now, I'm not making work in the same way, but right now I'm back playing piano more because my parents have a piano and I haven't ever had a piano in my house in New York. Or I'm reading a lot more, and so figuring or doing this, being able to talk to people like that I haven't connected with in a while. So I think just like staying creative in some form, cooking even, or baking, or whatever that is, and then like moving, just like the endorphins from doing a little jive or whatever it. So that was, what was the second part of your
well, I
question?
just want to comment on that because you said it's hard to find inspiration, but how you answered the question afterward, it's not actually hard to find inspiration. What I think inspiration, I'm just looking at your background.
Mm-hmm.
That in and of itself is an inspiring. I am finding nature on my walks extremely inspiring. I'm talking like you are to a lot more friends, a
Mm-hmm.
lot more female creative people. I'm just you know, and I don't want to give it up. That's what this time has given me too. And I, like you, found that I get sad if I can't create. And then I asked myself, well, isn't creation an everyday act? So like you cooking, like creating a little story. I walk. Great thing about a mask, I can talk to myself finally, and no one, and I'm not on the phone. No one thinks I'm crazy. But the other thing is that's part of the reason why I started these talks. It was a way for me to actually be active in my equity search for the community, for my dance community. And also, it's why I started the Zoom choreography. And it's so funny. I had an immediate lift, you know, just by being engaged again. And it can be any kind of engagement. It can be drawing. You don't have to do your dancer thing. You can, and great,
Mm-hmm.
but just writing. I'm reading more. I have time to do things that I didn't have time for.
Right.
And that's inspiring. So the second part of the question is, do you have a favorite or impactful memory from your creative life?
Oh,
Just, I know there are many, but just one that might come to you, like we talked in our improv classes, what comes to you now?
yeah. Well, so my grandma is here visiting. She turns 94 tomorrow. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, she is amazing, and she's here for 2 weeks. And I was talking to her about this actually, and she was just saying that for her she loves dancing, and I just like was taken aback by that, because she's not a dancer, or she was a secretary, office manager, and I think that just
Yeah.
movement brings so much joy. And so if I think about New Orleans and growing up in New Orleans, like two-stepping on the corner, like literally hearing music, or walking down to Frenchman Street, and just like putting these rhythm, like I kind of was taking this like tap classes and doing a lot of these like just a lot of footwork, and I just like loved that. And the musicians there are so talented that they would riff on that, and then you would riff on that, and that kind of back and forth and that kind of community, I think, has informed my whole life. But also just like that is so joyful. It's so much, there's so much joy in spontaneous dance, and like in just dancing. It makes you laugh, or it makes you, I mean, it's so cliche to say that,
It's
but
not cliche. I mean, being a dancer, I know exactly what you're talking about, but it wasn't just dancing, it was collaboration.
mhm, yeah,
Beautiful. Like
yeah,
spontaneous collaboration, which again is a perfect example of what can happen for us human beings. It's easier than using the other thing,
yeah,
than putting up
yeah,
walls.
yeah.
It's easier. Beautiful. Okay. Last big question. In supporting and building community, a more equitable community, there are many ways, I know, but what is, one way you believe needs to be shifted or changed,
Mm,
more equitable, inclusive,
yeah.
whatever?
I mean, so personally, I think like I, especially right now as a white woman, I need to step back and listen. And I think that's the biggest step for anyone to do. So listen um, to voices of color, and also just to anyone who hasn't been represented through the years, and then do the research, do the work. I just read So You Want to Talk About Race, which I highly recommend, is a great book. And then sorry.
Who's the author?
Oh, I'm gonna say the name wrong,
Okay.
so I'm not sure.
The title, So You Want to Talk About Race.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Um, and then I think like anything new that we're building, to think about getting being equitable from the ground up. I think that there's like in thinking about diversifying, sometimes it can turn into tokenism, and or there's
One representative. Yeah.
right, exactly. And that if we want real change, that you can't hire a consultant to be, to say and make one little change. You have to like get people in there, and you have to like in leadership roles, I think, in the important roles, not in the here we're going to give you a grant, look, we did something. I think that it has to be more integrated in the systems, in the organizations, in the foundations, in the companies, in the schools, and I think that can take time to do, but for people like me that are building something right now, that's what I'm looking for in the group of people that I hope to. We're starting a commencement committee for Le Moulin de la Belle, and so the people in that committee, I'm looking for it to be really equitable from the beginning, instead of getting somewhere and then being like, oh, we forgot to have blank, and then bringing someone in. And I just think there's so many different changes with also with making sure that you're voting, making sure that you're starting in local communities, and making the change from a local level, and then going up and up and up. But anytime you just raise your voice, I think, to say something, I think that's really important. I think that's what we have not been doing, is being like, yes, I believe in it, but, or I'll say for me, I think I believe in change happening, but I haven't speaking about it, saying anything about it. And so when I say like, oh, I would like to include what kind of professional development, so that's a common question at the end of a whatever company. A lot of companies I work for, New York City Ballet, I work for Dancing Classrooms, I work for even this course I just did. And so my question now is like, oh, what kind of professional development would you like? I would like someone to come and talk about equity, so that we're all on the same page about equity. And the more people that are saying that, the more that's going to happen. And then it'll trickle up, and the changes
Yeah.
can happen.
I mean,
But
basically, I think that people also want grants. I mean, just to put that out there,
yeah,
I agree
yeah,
with everything you're saying, but I'm not sure of how much, yes, time, but there are people out there right now that we can give opportunities to. So it's just about making the equitable choice.
yeah,
That's what I believe, because I think we can start right now. Maybe it doesn't need as much time as we think. We have to, that's also like, oh, I need to take time to shift my thinking, but just shift your thinking.
mm-hmm.
I'm not talking to you. I'm saying, I think I agree with everything you're saying, but there are grants to be given right now, and look for the people, make the equitable choices.
Yeah.
And I think that action, it's like what we just spoke about. It's like, it's easier, the ease and joy and the artistic possibilities and the human possibilities of collaboration, of you being on that street corner and dancing with a musician that's also there. You know, I think we need to shift our brain with action is action, and action is something present.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps it won't take as much time if we just commit to the idea
Right.
that the presence of action is doing it. It is the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
But also agreeing totally with what you're saying.
yeah. No, I think that you're right, and that action also, action in itself, like change is chemical, right? I mean, action in itself kind of makes something happen. So that when you make something happen, that it there's a yeah, it continues.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think about like how expensive it is to be poor, you know, in this way of like all of a sudden healthcare costs more, or getting to work costs more because you don't have a car and you have to take a whatever, all these different ways that it's really expensive to be poor. And in the same way that there's a lot of breaks to when you have money, that you gotta pay less because you don't have to pay a bank account fee because you have a minimum balance in it, right? All these kinds of ways. And I think
Backwards thinking, huh?
yeah, and I think that like if we apply that to equity too, that like one of the grants that I received is from um, uh, it's from like a catering job that I had. And I was just thinking like, here's where the money is. It's in the restaurant. I didn't get any money at that time yet from any dance organization, but here I got money from the restaurant that I worked for like 6 times or something, and so figuring out like, okay, well, here are the people with money or whatever it is that and here are the people that need it, but somehow it's hard to connect them. So any action items that we can do to connect. And like personally right now, our monthly donors are being donated, like all the donations for the company we're donating forward during this time.
Beautiful.
Monthly donors for the time being, so that I can at least have a little bit of action. And even if it's small, hopefully that action, and by letting those donors know, then maybe they'll match it, or what can we do on whatever scale.
That's beautiful, Mari. It's beautiful. That's walking the walk. Right on. Mari, you are just an extraordinary, generous, kind, forward-thinking. You're just a remarkable young woman. And I really thank you for this beautiful chat. I'm going to say one website and then you come in and say the other ones. So please go to marimeaddance.org for more information on Mari and her exciting work. And then what else do we have, Mari?
On Instagram, Mari Meade, or MMDC Brooklyn, or Le Moulin de la Belle. They're all there. And once we get our website up for Le Moulin de la Belle, then that's where we'll be advertising that too.
Great, beautiful. If you wouldn't mind staying with me as I finish up, and then we'll say goodbye. Okay, so Creative Vitality Jam sessions are now twice. They're podcast, not live. It's been like that for a while. Twice a week, 2 new sessions every week. We will post now on Tuesdays shift and Sundays. And we'll post it to our YouTube channel, Creative Vitality Jam Sessions. When you see, I will post to Instagram when this actually gets uploaded to the channel, and then you'll see in the description box more about Mari, short bio, but I will also include that link that you just sent about the Creative Catalyst. On our next Tuesday session will be a dear and one of my oldest friends, Alan Barnes, who I danced with in the Frankfurt Ballet. He is now a choreographer and assistant director for opera in Frankfurt, Germany, and all over Europe. And he is a former star of the Frankfurt Ballet. So, Mari, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank my wonderful intern, Gracie Spina, who full of ideas, always there. So thank you so much, Gracie. I want to thank my amazing dance community, which I am grateful and so honored to be a part of every single day. Mari, you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
And keep reimagining creativity, and hope to see you sooner than later. Bye.